It's a tool that allows you to create an automated process. Now, that process can be anything from maybe sending some kind of email alert out, so that perhaps when something changes in the database, or if we need to sort of send out some kind of confirmation or order confirmation, for example, to users, customers, whoever is able to receive an email, that can be a typical process. Or it could be something involving some kind of workflow where approval is required, or it could be some integration where we need to get data from one application into another. Now, I'll bring up the main TaskCentre console. The essence of the product here is that we want to be able to create the process so it runs behind the scenes based off of some external event taking place. I'm going to show you a couple of examples around using, in this case it's MAS 200 SQL edition, and also around Saleslogix, just so we can get a few ideas of the kinds of things that it can do. Now, it doesn't mean just that the stuff that I'm showing you is all TaskCentre can do, and I hope you'll appreciate that product of this sort can be used to build pretty much anything you want. I know that sounds very, very crass, but once you see how things work, you'll see why I say that. So let's start off with something fairly straightforward, and let's concentrate on perhaps doing some kind of alert. Now, these examples that I'm showing you here, really just for the purposes of illustrating what TaskCentre can do, not that I'm trying to show you specific functionality in MAS 200 or in Saleslogix. The fact is that TaskCentre as a product can work pretty much with any application, any database application, so as long as we can access data through an ODBC connection or OLADB, and that's probably about as technical as I'm going to get in this presentation, unless you want to sort of come back with specific questions. We can perhaps tackle those at the end. So let's dive in. Let's look at what TaskCentre is all about. Now, as I mentioned, I'm demoing this really with MAS 200 and Saleslogix purely as a way just to show you how we can affect data in the background. So TaskCentre is a standalone application. It's not specifically designed with Sage products in mind. As I said, it can work with just about anything. And you can have multiple connections to different databases, different data sources at the same time. And in actual fact, if we just have a quick look at some of the configuration steps that you may be involved in doing, when we talk about connections here, this is where I can be connecting to my ODBC data sources, and you can see here you can have a variety of different connections, or it could be through an OLADB connection. In this case, I'm using actually the Saleslogix OLADB provider to connect, or you can bring in data through XML or from flat file if that's what you choose to do. Now, in fact, the whole concept of TaskCentre is using tools to build the process for you. So we have different event tools that can trigger the process to fire. So we could have an email event, we can have workflow job submission, we'll talk about that in a few moments. You can have a scheduler, and there's database triggers, or if you actually find yourself using Oracle, we're able to work with that as well. And then various input tools we've had a brief look at. There's a number of formatting tools allowing you to work with XML, work with HTML, work with Word documents, crystal reports, and so on. And then output-wise, we can send emails, we can print documents, save files, we can use FTP to publish files, and so on. There's also some execute tools which are all about working with third-party code. So it could be running a program, it could be working with some VB script or something like that. And literally, Stop Press News, as this released as of Monday of this week, is a new feature that allows TaskCentre to connect to just about any SaaS or host or cloud-hosted application via a web service. I'm not going to show you too much about this. We'll talk about it at the end, but this promises to be some very exciting functionality indeed. And as I said, we'll talk more a little bit about this at the end of the presentation. And taking up the at the end, if you like, here is some general tools that consist of things like a text parser, data filter, and a little file management tool. Now, that's really all I'm going to say about sort of the system end of the product. I want to concentrate very much more on the business end about the kinds of things that you can build with TaskCentre, and show you some working examples so you can get a good idea and a good feel of what the product's about. So let's start here with an email notification here, where we might perhaps notify account managers of their accounts that haven't been touched in 90 days. Now, this is actually coming out of MES, but something very similar could come out of Saleslogix as well. So just to sort of, for the purposes of demonstration, I'm going to queue this task to run immediately. And what you'll see in just a moment is, you can see right here under the active tasks window that the task has popped up. You can see it executing. You can see there's a series of steps that we're going through here as well. That process is now complete. But I just wanted to draw your attention to the fact here we talk about active tasks, so you can actually have multiple tasks running at once, and that's going to be particularly important to you if things are coming in via a schedule, or they're being triggered by some kind of database event or something like that. Now, what that has done is generated a series of emails for me. So if I go over here to my inbox, I'll just refresh that so you can see those emails coming in. And you'll see they've got a collection of emails that we've generated. In this case, that's simply coming here from the admin account to Susan May. In this case, here's a list of her accounts and when we last had some activity. Oh boy, somebody needs to go back to Carter's Choice for whatever reason. No one's called them since 1753. So somebody has missed the boat on the possibility of doing some business there, I think. But here we have some further emails, as you can see, all formatted, addressed personally rather to the account manager and so on. So you can see here how we formatted the email. That there's a nice sort of formatted HTML table in there. So let's take a look now at TaskCentre itself. I'll double click on the task this time, and we can see the actual steps of the process. So if I want, I can have a schedule which is going to run this. The scheduler is fairly simple to set up. You can set the scheduling intervals and the frequency, if you like, based on perhaps days, weeks, months. It really is entirely up to you how you want to schedule this. You've got a lot of flexibility there. The idea here is that once this is set up, you don't need the TaskCentre client running. Everything's going to run in the background. It runs as a Windows service, so you only actually need to come into the TaskCentre client when some maintenance is required. Next, we have a database query, which is going to go and look for those untouched accounts. So if I double-click on the query, we'll see how the query is built using the graphical query builder. And if you've worked with something like Crystal Reports for building queries, you'll be comfortable with this kind of model of building the query. You see it's all based here, sort of fairly graphically rich. It's all done using an easy to use drag and drop interface. So if I want to include the customer city, I can just drag and drop that in there like that to include it. I put in my database joins. I can add some criteria here. I can even put sorting if I want. I can test that query as I go just to make sure that the data that's coming back actually does represent what I'm looking for. We should see the results that come back from that. Here we are. So here's my raw data, if you like, so we can see the kind of information that we've got coming back. So in this case, we've generated a record set, the record set now gets presented to the formatting tool, which then puts the email together. So here, if we have a quick look at the formatter, you can see how this is put together. This is the equivalent of a merge field, if you like, but you don't have to worry about this notation. In fact, what happens here is if I just delete that, you'll notice here on the right this browser window which pops up. This is your helper, if you like, as you're building your task. And so if you want to include the salesperson's name and the email in this example, I'll just drag and drop that in there like that, so you don't actually have to type that out. Now, if I just go back and preview that, you can see that there is in fact a table here that shows the actual account information. That's represented here by this placeholder. But I go here to the table designer, and this is how I build the table up. Again, dragging and dropping the fields or the columns from the database that you want. You can then format this pretty much however you want. You can put in your own column headings, your own variable widths if you want to. You can change the data format. I'm sorry, of things like date time fields so that you can have it displayed the way you want without the time and so on. And then you can use the formatting tab to set the borders, the background colors, the fonts of the different regions of the table through the title, and then the subtotaling in there as well if you need it. And then once the results of your query here are formatted, we can then use the same message tool to then deliver the email. And this looks like you're composing an email. You say who the email is coming from. Now here I've said this is just an admin user, but we can pick up our names and addresses from an internal address book here in TaskCentre if we want to, or I could use my Exchange address book if I happen to be using Exchange, or my Outlook contacts, or I can pull in data from my database if my query returns the sender of this email. Now, you might wonder why this is important from a sender's perspective. Isn't this more important from the recipient? Well, actually, it's important for both, because if we can consider the possibility of sending an email perhaps to customers that may be a new product or service announcement, for example, but you want that email to come from a real person. We want it to come from their inside sales agent rather than a typical do not reply type mailbox, so that when your customer receives this notification, you actually want to ask some questions, raise some issues about it, he can reply to the email, and it's actually going to come back to a real person, but the original email has been generated out of TaskCentre, and the recipient of that email need never know that it's an automatically generated email. So your recipient works in pretty much the same way, except of course we've got to cater to the fact that we might be sending carbon or blind copies, but the principle is exactly the same. So here, if I wanted to add a recipient from my database, I'll just drag and drop the name and email address in there like that and set that as the recipient. So it's very, very easy to do. And obviously we can put in a subject line. If we want to, we can include variable data in there as well from our database. You can even attach files to emails, and in fact there's no limit to the number of files that you can attach. And files can be either static, in which case they already exist somewhere, we've just got to go out to the network to find it, or it could be dynamic, which essentially means that at this moment in time the file doesn't exist, but it's actually going to be created by an earlier step in the task. So if, for example, we're going to distribute a crystal report, we could use the format run crystal report tool that will run the report, generate, say, a PDF file for us, and we can then dynamically attach that PDF file to the email and then distribute the report automatically. So TaskCentre can be used for automatic report distribution if that's the kind of thing that you'd like to use the tool for. So there's a simple alert. Now, if I want to add some additional steps to that task, I want to enhance it, depending on what it is I'm trying to do, but let's say I just want to run a little bit of a script, for example, just to show you real quick how you can add to the task. I can grab the script tool here, I'll drag and drop it here onto my task planner, I'll do my scripting as I need to, I'll add the code, click OK, and then I can just connect the steps in the task like that. And now if I decide actually that script needs to run here before my query, well, what I can do is remove that, put the script step over there and just redirect the flow of the task like that. So it makes alterations and modifications to the task a real snap to do. You don't have to sort of recreate stuff at all. So the maintenance, the flexibility of what you can do in the task is actually very, very easy to do. So in terms of functionality, let's have a look at a couple of more examples here, the kinds of things that can be done. And I'm going to go here to this example, excuse me, which is what we might need to do here. Perhaps we want to do some kind of sales order confirmation. So let's just sort of pretend here for a moment that I've got a sales order here, signal that for a minute, here in MAS 200. Or MAS 90, or could be MAS 500 for that matter. So you've entered the order, but I've elected here to confirm the order via email. So you see this checkbox right here is checked right now. So what that means is if I now go ahead and run this task, it will pick up on that on this sales order, and it's then going to prompt me to approve it. So it's gone through a series of steps here. So what it's actually doing is going and getting the order details from the database. It's going to format a web form for me, which I'll have access to, which will allow me then to either approve or deny this sales order, if you like. And then it's going to email me out with a link to actually perform that approval. So let's just sort of have a look at what's happened so far. Let me just clear out my inbox just to tidy things up a little bit, and I'll go out and collect the new message. So here we've got an email that's come in saying sales order approval. Let's open that up. And here we simply have a note to say sales order is pending your approval. I'm just going to go ahead and follow the instructions here to click on this link to review it. Now that's going to open up my browser. Now it could be Firefox, it could be IE, it could be Chrome, it doesn't matter. It's entirely up to you what browser you use. From the TaskCentre perspective, we don't mind at all. But it is all standard ASP type web pages behind all this, so it actually doesn't matter how we service this up. So here's my form. So you can see here's information about the order number, the customer, terms code, whatever else we choose to put on here, and here we have the actual order details and what the total value is. So the way that task is put together is like this. Let me double click on here and let's take you through these steps so you can see how we actually build this. So first of all, here's a query that goes and gets the order details. So pretty much as you saw with the accounts not touched, here's our query, a little bit more involved this time. But in this case, I'm just looking for orders where the confirmed order flag is set to yes. In this case, there's just one order being returned. And then we pass through a decision point on the task, because if this query doesn't find any orders that are requiring confirmation, then the task doesn't go any further. It really is that simple. It can stop at that point. So if we need to actually put some business rules into the process, we can do so with decisions very, very easily. Now, if we do find there are some orders, we're going to come through here and we're going to build up the table consisting of the actual order lines. In other words, this table right here is built using the Formatters HTML tool, and then I can present that to the form builder. And the form builder looks like this. So this is where we actually go in and create that form. So you can see how it's laid out. We've obviously got a label there, we've got some static information here in terms of the order number and so on, and then the actual order details are put here. And then we've got some action buttons that we can follow here. So that all leads to what you see here in this form. The idea being when the task runs, it obviously populates the fields and then displays like that. And then we have the notification that goes out to sending that, as you saw before. So let me just cancel out of here. Now, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and approve this, and you'll see behind in TaskCentre that the sales order update task is fired, and that's now going to go through. It's going to go back into mass. It's going to update that sales order for me and send me out a confirmation email that that's happened. So if I go back to the sales order entry screen right here, let me just go back to that order and ignore that. You'll notice now the confirm order via email flag has been cleared, so that order has in fact been accepted, and that's all been done through the back end. I haven't had to do that through mass. Just get rid of that email, because now in fact we've got a new one that will actually confirm that that order has actually been approved. So this is what we mean by workflow in TaskCentre. So there's the ability to create the process so that you can prompt the user for some kind of confirmation, acceptance, approval, call it what you will. The actual updating task looks like this. So here's where we have to go in and we fire the task on a workflow submission, and all we do here is say that if we receive a response from this raise sales order approval request, then we're going to capture our sales order number and then depending on which action the user took, did he approve or deny the request, it then will come through and either send a denial message or it will come through and send an approval message, and then it updates MAS behind the scenes. And that's how a simple update can be performed here in MAS 200. Now, I'm conscious of the fact that we've got some folk from customer using Saleslogix. So let me show you something very, very similar from a Saleslogix perspective. It's also based on the idea of approving an order, but I can show you how we actually initiate the process here of actually simply making the change this time in Saleslogix. So I've got an account right here, which is a prospect. You'll notice in the middle of the screen right here that we're able to store the ERP account number. Now, that's going to be captured by the finance department when they approve this order. So my scenario here is that we're going to go through, and when we close an opportunity, we're going to fire the approval request that's then going to prompt the finance department to set up the ERP account, give us the account number, and then that comes back into Saleslogix. So let me go ahead into the opportunity here. And I'm going to go through here. I'm going to close this opportunity. Now, bear in mind from the Saleslogix users that I'm actually working with the database behind the scenes, so the choice of client here is completely irrelevant. So we could be using web, we could be using mobile, we could be using LAN. It really doesn't matter from a TaskCentre perspective. So I'm going to go ahead and update that opportunity as closed one. Now, without me doing anything, you'll notice that the request new customer approval task is firing right here. And that's going to go through and do something very similar that we just did with the sales order approval, except this time it's going to prompt you to update something in Saleslogix. So let me go ahead and refresh my inbox here. Now this time it's come from Lee Hogan, who's our account manager. I'm going to go ahead and do this. And the process is very similar, but there's some additional functionality at play here, which I'll go through with you. So we'll just wait for that form to come up. So here we're being prompted to put in the ERP account number, which I will put in here ABC123, and I'll just go ahead and sign this off as my demo account, and I'm going to go ahead and accept that. So that's been submitted, that email's finished with, and again you'll notice if you look behind here in TaskCentre that the approve reject new customer task is firing, and that's now going to go back. It's going to update Saleslogix, it's going to convert the account Abbott Limited to a customer, it's going to store the ERP account number, and it's going to send out some confirmation emails. Now, updating Saleslogix is a little bit more involved than the sort of the quick trick that I used for MAS just now, because of course there's sort of the Saleslogix provider which needs to manage all the sort of the application logic within the database, and it also ensures, of course, any changes that we make to the database can then be synced out to remote users and so on. So we perform the update through there through a special connector tool, which I'll show you in just a moment. But if I go ahead now back to the account, you'll notice that the account has actually been updated as a customer, and you can see right here that in fact we've stored the ERP account number. So we have actually updated Saleslogix as well. I did actually generate some email confirmations as well from here, one going from Lee to the customer with a welcome note to say that your order has been approved. Okay, so this looks like a real email that the customer is going to receive. And then an email that from our finance office back to Lee to let him know that in fact the finance department has approved the new order for Abbott Limited. They passed all the credit reference checks and so on. So that's what's happening there. So a quick look at the task there will show you how this process works. It's actually these ones here. So we have request new customer approval. Now what's happening, now you remember that it's the original task fired when I actually closed the opportunity, and that does that using a database trigger. So the way that works here is we go into the opportunity table right here. We say that we're going to update, when we perform an update on the opportunity table, we can fire this task, and at which point it goes and gets the information. Again, we go through a decision, and then we format the form pretty much the same way as you saw before. But the actual updating task works slightly differently this time, because here what we've done is we've come in, and then depending if we're going to approve this task, we actually use the Saleslogix connector to perform the update. And here you can see how that update takes place. It's done using the Saleslogix connection, and in fact all we're doing here is saying update this account with this value, and it then translates the value that way. So there's no sort of programming involved to update Saleslogix. It all takes place here using a series of mappings